Welcome to the Wild Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Pfennig, and this is your space to learn more about the importance of slowing down, taking care of yourself, and the mind-body connection. And most importantly, how to reclaim your health by listening to your body's innate wisdom and reconnecting with the earth. Well, hey everyone, it's Alyssa, and I am back after a long hiatus. Some of you know, but some of you may not know, I had a baby in September. So, best laid plans of having ongoing podcasts just went out the window. Even though I had some lined up, I had guests lined up. But some things happened. My hips actually went out from baby sitting on a nerve, and I was on crutches that last month. Nothing like being super pregnant on crutches, but as soon as I hit 40 weeks and had her over 41 weeks, then I was fine and I could walk again. So it's interesting how the body works, but I am back. We're going to have regular podcasts, and what I'm introducing is I'm going to deep dive into certain subjects so that you can have some takeaways and start learning some things, as well as a mix of inviting guests. So I'm going to try to mix it up this year. That's what the feedback I've been getting. So I want to provide all of you out there with just some different things, some takeaways, and also some interesting conversations and new things you can learn. So be sure to subscribe and tune in because I am ready to launch. So I find myself talking about the importance of sleep with everyone in my life. And why? Because, 50 to 70 million Americans suffer from sleep disorders according to the American Sleep Association. It's something I've personally struggled with for years. And it took years to get my sleep back in rhythm. It's still a delicate matter. So today I'm going to share the tools I learned to use from Ayurveda. And that helps me get a good night's sleep. And yes, even while I was pregnant and now with a 4-month-old baby at home, I can still get a night's sleep, good night's sleep, as long as I'm using these tools. That's the key. I have to use these tools, and you will have to as well, but they work. So I also have a special gift for you that will help summarize all of the things that I'm talking about that you can have and use kind of as a cheat sheet to remember the things to do to help you sleep. So I'll have those in the show notes for you to download. That'll capture everything we're talking about today. But there'll of course be more that I explain throughout the podcast. So I hope you'll listen to the whole episode. But one thing before we dive in, I want to personally invite you to my next Wild Wisdom Retreat, May 28th through 31st at Oakwood Center in Selma, Indiana. So if you want to escape to the heart of nature and discover a deeper relationship with yourself, we'll explore the yoga concept of svadhyaya, which is about self-study. So we'll practice yoga, no yoga experience required. If that's your introduction, do some meditation, yoga nidra. We'll be at this beautiful retreat center in Selma, Indiana, which I happened to find out about when I was in Arizona, even though I live in this state. And we'll work with horses as a mirror to discover your true self. That's always a little part of the retreats I host. It's the only retreat that will be open to both men and women. So it's also a unique opportunity for everyone for exploration, because typically I only focus on working with women. However, men need introductions to these as well. So if that sounds amazing to you and you want to find out more, just go to alyssaPfennig.com/Indiana and you can put your deposit down to save your spot. And I just want to give a shout out to one of our listeners, Ashley Hinkey. She left this glowing review. So I found this podcast during my healing journey, and it's exactly what I need. Thank you, Ashley. So she says, I have learned so much from the guest speakers as well as the host. Thanks again. They have given me new ideas for healing that I have not heard of previously. This podcast is for you if you're longing to be more authentic, loving, and whole. Thanks, Ashley. That was so beautiful. And I am so glad. The whole intention of this podcast is to share all of this knowledge with all of you, because there are a lot of things that I have been exposed to, and and different ways of healing that, more than just our traditional Western models, and they're not always super woo either. Well, some of them are just integrative, and that was my intention of this entire podcast. And so I'm so glad that you enjoy it. Thanks, Ashley. Okay, I won't make you wait any longer, so let's go ahead and dive into today's topic on sleep. So I'll start by telling you my story. I was the chief operating officer for a national association, and work was my priority. So I wasn't always a yoga therapist. I switched careers actually, and I used to work in the association management world for over 10 years and was even a certified association professional for a long time. Now I'm a certified yoga therapist. Work was my priority. So all throughout my 20s, I was working, and I took this role on, because my, of course, ambition was to go up the ladder, be CEO or executive director, and that was what I was going to do. So I took this chief operating officer position thinking that's the next step, how exciting, and I put all of my energy into it because work was my life at that point in time. Work is still a big part of my life, but is not my only part of my life. Okay. So I worked so much so that I stopped sleeping through the night. I found myself living on Reds, vitamin C, and cocaine. Just kidding. I was just relying on coffee and soda all day long just to keep going. And I didn't used to drink coffee or soda at all. I used to drink tea before that gig, but I put the demands on myself. Plus, of course, there were real demands that things had to get done. I'm kind of a workaholic, and I've had to adjust, and I'm sure some of you can relate to that. But so I put in 70 plus hours work each week. My overachieving nature took its toll on my health. And I literally, like I said, had to drink coffee and soda to keep me awake. I needed the caffeine. I couldn't sleep well anymore. That went on for years. Of course, I left that job after a couple years because that was just too much. But it took me a while to figure out how to get my sleep back in order. And still, it's a delicate matter. And again, I have a baby at home, so even more of a delicate matter. But after years of searching for solutions, I found 5-HTP. I'm not an expert on this, but you can always look up more. And that is the first thing that started helping me sleep. And after some time, because of course, through all of these things that happened in my life personally, I had some other things going on. I went the Western route of trying to figure out some aches and pains and what they meant and yada, yada. And people, they tried to put me on pills just to go to sleep, like old antidepressants. And I was like, now I have dry mouth and I can't function. Like I can't even function. Like this isn't going to work. So in other episodes, I share stories about other aspects of my life, what led me to all of this, and to now share this with you. But this in particular, not getting sleep, is what led to a lot of other issues that I dealt with. And, kind of going through burnout and then deciding I can't live like this, and changing my mind and changing my life and to where I am now. So of course there's a longer history than that, but that's a little summary. So eventually I found Ayurveda. I'd already been a yoga practitioner for a long time. Ayurveda is the sister science of yoga. So I found some Ayurvedic lifestyle things and was introduced to that, and kept studying more and more for personal use. And now, of course, I use all of these, especially the tried and true for myself. I share these with clients and now with all of you. So when it comes to sleep, there are 3 main issues that people often face. And you might relate. So you either can't go to sleep, you're trying, you're suffering from insomnia. You wake up in the middle of the night, or you think you slept all night and then you actually wake up and don't feel refreshed, and you're kind of frustrated because you're like, I laid in bed for 8 hours, or even 7, and I still feel like I've been run over by a truck. And sometimes that's the most frustrating. So I'm going to go through and talk about these 3 different issues that most people face, and then give you some solutions. And like I said, these are tried and true. They work. They are based in Ayurvedic medicine, which, as I mentioned before, is a sister science of yoga. And it flourished in India. So pretty much, every country, when you think of Eastern medicine, you have Chinese medicine, which is the most documented and more people know about. And then, like, I've worked with Thai medicine because I'm trained in Thai yoga massage, so that flourished in Thailand. And then Ayurveda is what the medicine was originally in India. And still, if you know anyone from India, there's probably some traditional things that they still use that was integrated into growing up, like using honey to help medicinally with putting in your cheek and keeps the nasal passages clear, those simple little things. In fact, my pediatrician is Indian, and when I went and talked to her, she mentioned that she might suggest, more traditional things that she learned from her father-in-law, who was also a physician, and a lot of it was Ayurvedic. So I totally connected with her because I got it. Because these simple things, these lifestyle changes, simple things we have in our household can really be helpful. We just have to educate and learn because we've been taught, go get a pill, antibiotics, those sort of things. And those are necessary sometimes. Like, I have to take Zyrtec for my allergies as I'm still exploring how to manage those or even get rid of my allergies completely. So we need certain things sometimes, but as we're educating yourselves, you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure there's other things that you follow, you can start to learn, how can I tweak these things? So we'll dive in. So there's these, in Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine has similar things, but we'll stick with Ayurveda today because they're very similar, but just slightly different. There are patterns during the day. And so if we start to live within noticing these patterns, the timing of the day, seasonal changes, those sort of things, we start living in tune with the rhythm of nature. Then we start to heal and get back to center and get back to balance. So there are these different times a day that if we learn kind of what they are, especially when it comes to sleep, we can fall asleep easier and we can wake up refreshed. So let's talk about if you can't go to sleep. So wherever you're at listening to this, you can raise your hand or you can not. But like, raise your hand if you have trouble falling asleep but you go to bed after 11, or I'm sorry, even after 10, okay? And if that's you, do you notice if you go to sleep, especially after 10, now there's no absolutes, there's sometimes a little wiggle room, that you can't fall asleep, that your mind starts racing. It's like you get a second wind. And that's because there is this time between 6 and 10 p.m. in the evening and during the day, which I'll talk about more, where it's more of a heavy, earthy period. And so if you go to sleep before 10 p.m., it's easier to fall asleep. Now, if you go to sleep after 10, from 10 to 2, you're starting to get into a fiery period. So it's governed by the element of fire. So 10 to 2 during the day, that's why it's great to eat lunch between 10 to 2, 10 to 2 at night. That's when like all the ideas are coming, all the things you have to do. That's why it's recommended to have a notebook by your bedside so you can get them all out of your head, that sort of thing. But you're literally getting a second wind and fired up. And that's why sometimes you can't go to sleep until like 1 or something like that, because you are just revved up. So if you suffer from insomnia and have trouble falling asleep, here is what I recommend. Obviously, go to sleep by 10. So start settling in by 9:30 into bed, taking any stimulation out. even reading can be overstimulating. But of course, like, first take the technology out, and stop watching TV or being on your laptop by 9 so that you can settle in, and then maybe you read. Keep the electronics out of your room if you can, so get another alarm clock beside your phone, so that you can just keep it out, because it will affect your sleep. Ditch caffeine after 3 p.m. So, can't remember this exact statistic with caffeine, but there is a half-life to coffee. So it's like 12 hours to get out of your system, but I think half of it takes 6 hours. It's something like that. I'm not for sure. So you might notice that if you drink caffeine after 3, you're still wired by the time it's coming to bed. So maybe shifting your caffeine intake. I mentioned, so this is one of the things I do. I set do not disturb on my smartphone. I have an iPhone from 9 p.m. until like 8:45 or 9 a.m. I am totally turned into my father, because I remember that growing up, of course, we didn't have cell phones and all that then, but like my dad would turn the ringer of the landline off at 9 p.m. so he wouldn't get disturbed. And, you know, as a teenager growing up, you'd be like, oh, but, you know, so my boyfriend's going to call me, or so-and-so. But now I'm totally my father, and I just do it in a different way and put do not disturb on. And I even went so much as I don't even get the notifications if I look at my phone in the morning. That is not the first thing I see. All the text messages, all the notifications, Facebook messages, all the, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. I took those off my phone. It doesn't mean I can't access and look at the notifications. They're just not all there when I pick up my phone. So that's something else I suggest that doesn't necessarily adjust with the sleep, but it at least like gives you some peace in the morning. So let me run through these again. And again, you can download my handout at alyssapfennig.com/26 and or /26. And then this has a summary. Okay. So since I'm sharing some stories. So if you have trouble going to sleep, go to bed by 10, unplug and shut down screens by 9 p.m., ditch caffeine after 3 p.m., use another alarm clock beside your phone to keep technology out of the bedroom. Of course, you know, get the TV out of the bedroom. Set an automatic do not disturb on your smartphone from 9 p.m. until whatever time you're ready to like be bothered in the morning. The other thing I really love supplementation wise, you know, I mentioned I first tried 5-HTP. I don't take that anymore. And I'll go into something else, but going to sleep, magnesium lotion, it saved me, especially while pregnant, because I suffered from restless legs. And not just taking a pill of magnesium, I found that topical magnesium works best because your body's going to absorb what it needs rather than just giving it, you know, whatever's in that pill. So my favorite is from 8 Sheep Organics, and I'll link in the show notes to that. Of course, they advertise for pregnancy, but you can use it if you're not pregnant. It's not going to affect anything. But this totally saved me, and why I slept, except when I was like giant in month 9, but while I slept throughout my whole pregnancy. And magnesium lotion, there's some other things in 8 Sheep Organics as well, but I put it on my shins. There are some acupressure points right below the knee as well, because I had restless legs, so I put it there, but it helped me fall right to sleep and go into a deep sleep. So I recommend that for sure. Let's dive in. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me, and happy to guide you through this, because I know sleep it's the foundation. It's the foundation for our health. And so many people, like I said, 50 to 70 million people, or Americans, you know, that's not even counting everywhere else, have sleep disorders. And we live in such a high stress, so busy life, you know, in society, and like all these demands. You know, sometimes it's us and not saying no and creating boundaries. That's a whole nother issue. So that's why I'm giving you like precise things. And sometimes it's just not knowing how to do anything besides, oh, here's Ambien. Well, you don't need to deal with the side effects of Ambien. There are lots of natural changes. So that's why I'm sharing this with you today. So let's talk about if you wake up in the middle of the night. Okay? This I know is quite common. I hear this a lot. And, most often, so there are certain times we can wake up in the middle of the night depending on what organs may be in dysfunction, digestive organs, or need some attention, not always in a dysfunction. And Chinese medicine has a really good kind of maps of the times when the digestion's happening, yada, yada. But I love, like, someone will tell me, oh gosh, I didn't sleep. I woke up this time. And I go, was it between 3 and 5? And I'll have this conversation all the time, especially in the fall. And they're like, yeah, how'd you know? And well, I'm not, magic or anything. It's just that there's these patterns. So I talked about between 10 and 2, day or night, it's more of a fiery time. Between 10 and 6, day and night. 6 to 10, day and night, it's more of an earthy time. So between 2 to 6, it's more of an air time. So it's governed by the element of air. So and as Americans especially, or in Western societies in general, we are more out of balance because of stressors and busyness and expectations and constantly getting stimulated by, the TV, electronics, all that stuff. So we are more prone to go out of balance in this area with the air element. There are prior episodes, and I'll link to them in the show notes because I can't recall what numbers, where we go over the doshas in Ayurvedic medicine. So I interviewed Ellen Leonard, and she talks about the differences. So you can dive into that. But in general, Vata dosha governs this time from 2 to 6. And so if you're waking during this time, you're most likely experiencing anxiety and your body's trying to tell you something. So if anxiety is present and you wake up, especially during this time, it's hard to go back to sleep. And then you look at your alarm clock, then you calculate, gosh, but I have to wake up at 6, it's 4 o'clock. And then you try to go back to sleep, and then you just feel completely awful. Or you press snooze, and then you feel worse. And we'll talk about that too. So you just feel basically completely screwed and exhausted the next day. So there are some different things you can do to help calm the anxiety and help you sleep through the night. Also talk about supplementation. But it can also be related to your diet and your digestive system and how it's functioning. So if your digestive system is backed up and overloaded, because I mentioned, that each digestive organ is processing at different times during the night. So, and if you're constipated, which is related to a Vata dosha imbalance, if you're constipated, you need to poop, that's related and could be why you're waking up also in the middle of the night. So, here are some tips to calm your anxiety and, of course, get to pooping. One of the biggest things in calming Vata dosha and anxiety is creating a consistent routine. Of course, because in Ayurvedic medicine, like increases like and opposites heal. So, of course, if you're out of balance, the last thing you really want to do is create a routine because you're not a routine person. That's typically like there's this conundrum. But having a routine, a consistent bedtime and kind of sleep hygiene ritual and a wake-up routine and morning ritual will actually help you heal. It'll help calm down your anxiety. It will help you sleep through the night. It will help with health, cravings, all kinds of different things. But it may be challenging for you to do. So you're going to have to do whatever's in your power to start doing it. So that whole going to bed by 10 p.m., that could be like one thing you try. And it might take quite a few nights or a week for you to start getting into routine. And so be gentle with yourself as you make these changes and start with one at a time. So here's some more things. If you're suffering from anxiety and lots of stress, of course, yoga and meditation, I always recommend that. Breathing, pranayama practices. So breathing practices are huge. But I especially love to recommend, and do myself if I ever experience this, is a yoga nidra before bed. That will also help you go to sleep, but a yoga nidra practice before bed. And I highly recommend that. And I think I will link to a yoga nidra practice in the show notes as well. So you know what this is. It's a guided meditation. You can do one for 10 minutes or you can do one longer. Of course, you can search the web for these. And my favorite yoga nidras are from iRest and from Daring to Rest. Those are my favorites out there. And that will help your body calm down in order to provide a good night's sleep and help you sleep through the night. So that it's twofold. Give yourself a foot massage or use the tennis ball, run your foot on a tennis ball. So I talked about constipation, digestive system backed up and overloaded. Not only will giving your feet some attention help ground you and feel calmer, massaging the arch of your foot or anywhere on the foot really, but especially in the arch, helps your digestive system. So in reflexology, which I'm not an expert by any means, your foot is tied to the rest of your body. It's why going barefoot and putting your feet on the earth is so important, because we get so much from the earth, and it helps facilitate everything working through our body because we're getting pressure on that. We wear shoes, and essentially one of the best lines, I may not quote it exactly, from Women Who Runs with the Wolves, it's like we're not used to wearing blindfolds on our feet, and that's what shoes are. And not that we can't go without shoes constantly, but at home, maybe out in the yard or wherever, trying to go out without shoes sometimes would help. But definitely giving yourself a foot massage, using a tennis ball, just running your foot over that or both feet. Adding some like sleepy herbal oil. I love the sleep oil from Banyan Botanicals. Putting that on your feet at night and then putting some socks on so the oil doesn't get all over your bed. That will help you sleep through the night as well. The other thing I love is, let me mention this first. So, of course, I mentioned your digestive system. So if you want to poop, you're going to need more fibrous foods and greens, because if you're constipated, like I said, that is a sign of being too light and airy, and that will keep you kind of up through the night. So more fibrous foods, more greens. So think of, I used to tell a male client I had, more wet foods, not dry foods. So soups, especially during the fall and winter, like time right now, soups, and then you could have juices or nice nourishing like coconut milk lattes, and I'm going to share my recipe with you as well. So like think of these wet foods. It's very important. So I've been breastfeeding, and it's very interesting how it's so important what I take in and how it affects my daughter and whether she's constipated or not. So we really have to pay attention, especially during this time of year. Raw salads and raw vegetables, it's not that you can't eat them at all, but you may want more cooked things, and you may be craving that as well because it's winter. Now comes spring, summer, then the more raw in season might feel nourishing when it's hot. But because it's cold, we're, soups, stews, some sauteed kale with garlic, those sort of things. So just think of that. So one of my favorite things and what I do every day is I create what I call a Chi Balancing Latte. And I'll put a link to this recipe in the show notes. So I love, if you really have issues, especially with adrenal fatigue, a high allostatic load of, it's just stress, busy, lots to do, you're having anxiety, you're burnout, exhausted, the Chi balancing formula from Anima Mundi Apothecary is my go-to. It is to help the adrenals. It's the whole HPA axis, and it will help give you energy, help rejuvenate you, help you sleep through the night. I mean, it's amazing. And it's a powder form. Some people don't like that. So I like to put it into and make a latte. And it's just with coconut milk, some spices, maybe it's chai spices or cinnamon, or maybe if you like coffee, which I like coffee, but I don't drink caffeine much anymore. You can put some coffee in it, like some espresso or something in a French press, and just, it's milky, and especially during the winter, it just feels so comforting and nourishing. But if you drink it every day, you will sleep through the night better. So I'll put a link there and to Anima Mundi because they are my favorite. So hopefully that will help you, because I know that is sleeping through the night or waking up and not being able to go back to sleep is a huge issue for many of you. So let's dive into the last one. Not waking up feeling refreshed. You're like, oh, I laid there for 8 hours. I woke up and I want to press snooze 100 times, or maybe I'll just sleep another hour till 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever, or I'll catch up on my sleep. And then you're like, I might as well just stayed up when I woke up at 4 or 5, because now I feel like complete shit. And I feel like I've been run over by a truck, and now it's going to be hard to function. Like, if you've ever felt like that, I know I have before. So it's the quality of sleep and the time we're getting up. So this is a kapha imbalance. You're not getting the deep sleep you need, and then when you decide to sleep in, like I said, you feel even more crappy. So routine is always going to help you. So all of the things that I talked about with going to sleep and staying asleep, those are all going to apply here. However, you'll also want to wake up by 6 a.m. That could be exactly at 6 a.m. It could be 5:30, it could be 4 a.m. if you're an overachiever. Great. But ideally, if you're going to sleep by 10, waking up at 6, there's 8 hours. Doing that will actually help you sleep through the night, get a good night's sleep, and be refreshed. Because remember when I talked about between 6 and 10 a.m. is an earth time, that's a kapha dosha related time. It's governed by kapha dosha. So if you're sleeping in past 6 and pressing snooze and you feel worse, or you're having lucid dreams, I know I've had that, and I'm sure some of you can relate. Like, you go back to sleep in the morning and you're like, what was that? So that's because between 6 and 10 is really earthy. And it takes a few days, I know, to get in the rhythm, because you're like, oh, I don't want to wake up, I just want to sleep. So, I always mention, try the 10 to 6 first. Then you can start adjusting your diet or adding exercise or this, or maybe keep technology out of the bedroom first. Like, do one thing first. But ideally, setting up that consistent bedtime routine and consistent morning routine is going to help all of your sleep issues. It is challenging, I know, but if you do it, it will be a lot less challenging the more you do it, and it will become a routine, and you'll be fine. So wake up by 6 a.m. and actually get up. That's the other thing. So whatever you need to do to actually get you up. Animals are helpful. If you get them on this routine, they will wake you up. They will want to be fed. So in this sense, routine is really helpful. And eating lighter meals before bed, and at least 2 hours before bed, were really helpful. And then doing some walking or some movement in the morning, even 10 minutes, will help you start to feel refreshed and get you in a rhythm. And again, keep technology out of the bedroom, because even though your cell phone sitting on your nightstand, it's your alarm clock. Oh, well, but I'm not on my cell phone, or it's, even the blue light's not on. It's the fact that it's there can create like the silent psychological or stressor, or there is some to say, and I believe it, about like just the electromagnetic field or something that just kind of keeps you on. And I know when my cell phone is out of my bedroom, I have a deeper sleep. So that's what I would recommend. If you are suffering from all three of these issues, which I know a lot of women I have talked to and work with are, then implement all of these, but start with one. And the going to bed by 10, getting up at 6 will help tremendously. So if you're not ready to do that, then start with some others. Start with supplementation. I always recommend maybe doing some supplementation with some herbs or that chi balancing formula to help rejuvenate the body, feel better, and then it's easier to make these changes. It's easier to go do yoga. It's easier to exercise in the morning. It's easy. Then you don't have cravings, because if you have certain cravings, it's because oftentimes there's a nutrition deficiency. So start feeling better, and then it's easier to make changes like going to bed by 10 or whatnot. So hopefully this all made sense to you. And if you're intrigued by all of it, like I said, go to alyssapfennig.com/26 or 26 and download the guide that kind of summarizes this so that you'll have it handy. And definitely check out the show notes for, of course, the guide will be linked here, but for some other things I mentioned throughout the podcast, because I want to help you feel better. Like all the things that I've learned throughout my life and how I've kind of ended up here and how I've kind of shifted my health. And there's always still layers of things to peel back. But I want you to know there's solutions, there's things you can do. And that's why I'm sharing this. So I'm excited to deep dive into some of these topics. And then we'll keep going forward from there. But definitely go into the show notes and download. And then So, I want to hear from you. What did you think of today's topic? Direct message me on Instagram or Facebook, or better yet, join the Wild Wisdom Collective, my free Facebook group, and chime in on the discussion. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and insight. And if you love what you're hearing, please take a moment to click the button on your smartphone to subscribe. Or, better yet, write a review and tell me why you love tuning in. And maybe you'll be featured in our listener spotlight on a future episode. I cannot wait to see you again, same time, same place next week. Wild blessings.